Today we're going to be learning about fermentation, and we're going to make an observation and do an experiment related to it. Fermentation is a process used by some organisms to get energy out of sugar without oxygen being present. So we learned about cellular respiration, how you need oxygen, but in fermentation, no oxygen is required. There's two types of fermentation. There's alcoholic fermentation and there's lactic acid fermentation. Now, with alcoholic fermentation, you have sugar and it breaks down into ethanol and carbon dioxide. With lactic acid fermentation, the sugar is broken down into lactic acid. So today we're going to be observing fermentation. It's a process used by organisms to get energy out of sugar without the presence of oxygen. And so yeasts are single-cell organisms that can carry out fermentation in addition to cellular respiration. So we're going to be using some yeast today, and we're going to be watching and observing fermentation take place. So what you'll need is some sugar and some fast rise yeast, 2 bottles, just any old water bottles will do, some warm water, make sure it's warm, not hot, but warm, and 2 balloons. You'll fill the bottles with the warm water close to the top, but not all the way. So you'll fill those up, and then
okay, you can stop.
You'll go ahead and you'll add some of the yeast. Okay, you'll probably be a little bit more scientific than me, but right here, we're going to put in some yeast, a couple spoonfuls, about the equal amount for both of them as you're putting it in. Now, as I was putting it in, I realized I probably should have put the sugar in first, but that's okay. So I decided to continue on and go ahead and add the yeast. So I added the yeast to both of them. I'm just finishing some off, making sure I've got about the equal amount in each. Okay. And now I'm going to add some sugar, but only to 1 container. So here's the experiment. We're going to see what happens to the bottle with the sugar. We're going to see if the yeast will undergo fermentation. If it happens, then there should be something that's released in the chemical reaction. So I'm adding a couple spoonfuls of sugars just to the one on the left. The other one is going to be our control, and we'll just keep that with just water and yeast. So you're going to screw on the cap and kind of tip it upside down, shake it up, make sure it's nice and mixed, and take the cap off. And do it for the other one as well. Make sure it's nicely mixed. Okay, we're going to keep those caps off to the side. Now remember, there's just sugar in this 1 container. That's the variable, is the sugar. Now that's the dependent variable. The independent variable will be what happens. So we're going to put a balloon on each of them. You just make it nice and loose around the top. Make sure it's sealed properly, and then you're going to have to wait. And actually, you have to wait a little bit of time. But I did this in a time-lapse video right here, so you'll start to see some changes. Keep your eye on the one on the left. See how the bubbles are starting to form? And as it does, the balloon just fills up. And what's happening is that the yeast is breaking down the sugar, and it's producing ethanol and carbon dioxide to fill up that balloon. So our sugar was broken down by that yeast, and as a result, we had energy released, and ethanol and the carbon dioxide was released, causing the balloon to inflate. Well, I hope you enjoyed this demonstration of this fermentation.